Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, your go-to source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We hope you tune in often for all things people management, organizational development and change, organizational leadership, and social impact related. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI Podcast episode, I talk with Lee Eisenstaedt about effective leadership characteristics, particularly the importance of self-awareness and humility. Hello, Lee Eisenstaedt. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. It's great to have you with me today.
Thanks a lot, John. I'm glad to be with you.
I'm so excited to have the chance to talk with you and explore some important topics. Before we dive on in for our discussion, though, I wanted to share with the listeners a brief introduction. Lee Eisenstaedt brings more than 35 years of diverse leadership, finance, and operations experience to the clients of the Leading with Courage Academy. The CFO of SC Johnson has described Lee as a well-rounded businessman because he's worked for more than two companies in more than two functions in more than two countries. Lee focuses on helping individuals and teams in employee and family-owned organizations realize peace of mind and confidence from being more effective leaders and managers. This is accomplished with the leadership workshops and assessments and a process for succession planning offered through the Leading with Courage Academy, which are based on his fourth book, Leading with Courage, The 9 Critical Behaviors of Effective Leaders and Managers, published in June of 2019. Prior to founding Leading with Courage Academy, Lee was a founding partner of L. Harris Partners, LLC, during which he surveyed and interviewed several thousand clients and professional service firms. He has been a chief operating officer of a top 5 and a top 50 CPA firm. And Lee spent the majority of his career, 22 years, with SC Johnson family of companies, including the consumer products company, the SC Johnson Family Office, and Johnson Outdoors, Inc. in the US and Western Europe, frequently as the right hand to the leader of the division, subsidiary, or country in which he was assigned. During his 2 European assignments with SC Johnson, Lee lived and worked in Paris, France for 5 years and had responsibility for finance, accounting, logistics, IT, and customer service in 5 countries within the European Union. Lee also spent 6 years with Baxter International, Inc. in various finance and accounting positions. What a tremendous background. I'm so pleased to have the chance to talk with someone with your depth and breadth of experience in so many different places.
Well, I'm glad to be here, John, but in listening to that, I see I've got to shorten it up because now there's no time left to talk about anything else.
No, it's wonderful. And it's great for the listeners to have a sense of your expertise, but also, like I said, your both your depth and your breadth of experience across functions, across organizational types, and in different countries. I mean, frankly, that's the world we live in. We're in an incredibly interconnected, globalized society, and businesses have to learn how to function effectively in a globalized space, and we need to be able to help leaders function within diverse organizations and operating across time and place. And so I think it's a tremendous opportunity to talk with someone with your background.
It is a real differentiator, I think. Often we run into people, I run into people that you think are in organizations that are going to be very well-traveled, very diverse. And many of them haven't even traveled to Europe, more or less worked there, for example. The other thing it did for me is I don't just have to say, gee, I understand business and I understand different business models. I've got the background that proves I've done it. So, for example, my time in Europe, there were 5 countries that I was responsible for and 5 different business models.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's more than just saying it. It's I've actually got
Yeah,
showing them.
and the truth of the matter is it's incredibly complex, right, to work in that kind of an
Yep.
environment, uh, and everything that entails. And so I think that brings a richness to the discussion that we're going to have today. And one of the things I hope we can discuss is your Leading with Courage Academy and your book Leading with Courage. I'd love to have that kind of woven through some of the various topics we discussed today. But as we get started, can you just share briefly what you consider to be the driving force behind your practice? What really makes you tick, and why are you doing it?
Sure. Sure. With the background I've had, it became really clear to me, or it's become clear to me as I've gotten more experience, that one of the challenges, one of the reasons organizations and the people in these organizations uh, have so many issues, it's just a deficit of self-awareness. And if we can work on improving that, we would go a long way to just having better relationships. You know, a lot of the problems that we have today, and I can give you really 2 quick examples of how one is where I've benefited from increasing my self-awareness, and it was really the impetus for the practice. And the other was just a client that is a great example of a lack of self-awareness. In my case, I went to something called Center for Creative Leadership, which, if any of your readers, listeners know about it, it's a very intense self-awareness program on leadership. I came out of it at the end and they said, if you want to get where you want to go, you've got some blind spots and you're going to have to get over them. And the biggest one was I was not comfortable talking about myself. Many finance people are this way. They think it's shameless self-promotion. I won't bore you with what all I did, but I started talking to a lot more people about my interest, which was an assignment in Europe. I had never said that. I just thought if I did good work and provided good service, it would happen. Well, within 9 months of that program and going out and talking to the CFO of Europe, the VP of Finance, different country managers, I did get that assignment in Paris, and it lasted 5 years. So if I hadn't become self-aware of a blind spot I had, being comfortable talking about myself, a game-changing, life-changing experience wouldn't have happened for me and my wife. The other example
Can I
was,
just
yeah,
note something there? I think that's great. Not only did you touch on the importance of critical self-reflection and self-awareness, that's I think that's an essential part of effective leadership. Um, but you also talked about how you then communicated your desires to others around you. The truth is, most organizational leaders, not all, but most, want to empower their employees. They want to give opportunities. They want to help people succeed, but they don't have a crystal ball, and they don't always know. Organizations and leaders should proactively seek out that kind of information. They should try to understand their employees, and they should try to try to keep their finger on the pulse of their employees. So I don't want to remove any responsibility from them to do those things. But on our side as employees, we also need to speak up for ourselves, right? We need to share our successes. We need to share our wants and our dreams, because oftentimes our managers or leaders up the line, they just don't know. They don't know what you want, and they don't know that that's something that you would value. And so the fact that you both were reflective on that, and then you were proactive about it, then, like you said, it led to a life-changing experience.
and those are 2 of the critical factors in change. Once you've got that insight, you have to do something with it. And sharing it with others, what you're trying to do, what you want to accomplish, is one of those big steps. And it takes people outside their comfort zone. They don't like doing that. The other example that I had for you of a lack of self-awareness was a client, a professional services firm, that had retained us to do a client loyalty assessment. And we went out and assessed how loyal their clients were to the firm. And it was a little surprising. 49% of the clients said they were loyal to the firm, which is low. We'll typically see upper 60s. And when we see whatever the client says, the partners in firms tend to be underraters. And I expected 5 to 10 point lower score by the partners on how loyal do they think their clients are to the firm. When I tell you only 1% of the partners thought their clients were loyal to the firm, I'm not kidding. 1%. I,
Oh.
they thought everyone was out the door.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, what does that mean? I said, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. You're not, because you're so afraid of, you know, their impression of you. You're not taking price increases. You're not charging for out of scope work. You're not asking for referrals. You're not doing anything to grow your business. 1% versus 49%. Now, you would think, I mean, that was a great example of lack of self awareness. And then when you know the end of the story, they didn't do anything as a result of that. We identified millions of dollars of opportunity that they didn't disagree with, but because they didn't want to go out and talk to their clients, because they were just content, complacent with what was going on, they haven't done anything.
Yeah, and perhaps, do you feel like they didn't trust the data you were sharing with them, or what do you think the
No,
reason was?
no, they trusted it. And we hear that frequently. They'll challenge the data first. It's like a Van Gogh painting. They're looking for that one brush stroke that's out of place and say, see, it's a fraud. No, I think they were successful at doing what they were doing, and they said, to do what you're suggesting, to change that 1%, 49% gap, to close it, we have to go out and talk to our customers more, to our clients. We have to get much more personal with them. And that's not what they like doing.
Yeah.
And they were making enough money that they said, it's not worth it.
So
It would
it truly
just,
was just complacency.
it was complacency, but it was just this lack of self-awareness,
Yeah.
or lack of awareness that there was this huge opportunity for them, and they didn't want to take it.
Okay. Well, so clearly self-awareness is important. Um, what do you feel are like some of the most important characteristics of a successful leader?
Yeah, in my book, and it's part of the Leading with Courage Academy practice, I identified 9 critical behaviors of effective leaders. And we even offer a free self-assessment of those on our website. We've had several thousand people take it. And if anyone goes to our website, lwcacademy.com, they'll find that there, and they're happy to take it. They aren't going to get bombed with a bunch of emails. It's totally free, but you'll find out which of the 9 behaviors you may have to be on the alert for. But some of them, and those 9 behaviors look like, they respect the culture. They don't come in and say, we got to change the culture right away. They don't stick with underperformers too long, which is something most entrepreneurs and leaders are guilty of. They stick with people, clients, customers too long when they've proven that they aren't worth it. Or they come in with the answer. Rather than asking, what do you think? They come in with the answer. So there are these 9 behaviors, and those are the things we can see about their behavior. But the other characteristics are they humble? Uh, and the best ones I've found don't know how good they are. And that's what is so great about them. And they have a humility about them and don't think they know it all. And they probably have some of those blind spots that we've identified, because if anyone tells me they don't have any, I don't believe them. We've all got them, and they just haven't asked enough people, what could I be doing better? They're vulnerable. So when they find out they've got a blind spot, it was like me. You go out, you proactively try to address it. Um, they admit they don't have all the answers. The other thing is they tend to be generalists. They do not tend to be specialists in one area. And so that they are very broad-minded, broad experienced people. Another characteristic is they're terrific at building relationships. They're all-star relationship builders. They believe in the culture, which is something I said earlier, as well as innovation, and they're champions of that. They will protect the culture and purge out people, if you will, or practices that aren't consistent with it. And last, and this is the toughest one, they're courageous decision makers. And that one's really hard to draw a line in the sand, let's say, and stick with it. Not that you can't change your mind when there's more information or better information, but to flip-flop isn't good. But the challenge for this one, why people always score lowest on it, is we all want to be liked. And so we don't want to say no to anyone. So it's easier to say yes to everybody. But I can assure you, most people would rather be disappointed that you said no than surprised that you don't follow through on your commitment. So those are, I think, some of the characteristics we find of the best leaders.
Yeah, that's a great list. Let's drill down a little bit on the I would term it, I'd phrase it as intellectual humility. And you said a couple of things related to that they didn't think they had all the answers, so they would seek input, right? That they were humble, and that they didn't think their ego wasn't so big that they, were constantly parading themselves around as the person with all the answers, right? I think that's so important for organizational leaders, really at any level of the organization, for a number of reasons. One is simply no one individual person has all the information, right? And so whether they think they do or not, they don't. And so when you get someone who just makes snap decisions on things without seeking the input of others in their team, without uh, searching out expertise where appropriate, without getting supporting data, when you have people making decisions that way, it doesn't show their humility. They tend to make bad decisions, and it can harm a lot of people. So there's that, in terms of the quality of the decision making, there's that problem. But in terms of empowering your employees, engaging your employees, and helping them feel bought in to your vision and mission of what you're trying to accomplish, and feeling, and having a positive, sustainable culture, helping them feel heard, in terms of your employees and how you manage them, it's so vital that you do that. And yet my experience has been with most organizational leaders, they tend to rise because of their expertise, not because of their generalist or systems thinking abilities. And they tend to rise because of their confidence and because of their assertiveness. And not that confidence and assertiveness are bad, but if they're not tempered with some humility, then it can be detrimental. What's your experience been in relation to some of those?
It's absolutely that. I mean, what we find and where we spend a lot of our time is helping organizations identify the gaps between where they are and what they want to be. How do you create a healthier organization? It's not about how you become smarter as an organization, and that, I'm not here to help you get better at finance or marketing or managing the supply chain. There's plenty of other people that can do that and do it better than we do. But when you get to organizational health, and by that I mean, is there a high level of trust among everybody? Do you hold each other accountable for your commitments and your results? Is there those would be two of the biggest elements that we can identify in doing assessment, talking to the individuals in the organization, doing assessments. Are you a high performing organization? Are you a micromanager? We have over 40 different assessments we use. Some of them are self-assessments, good number of them, which I don't put as much stock in as I do 360s, where I go out and ask others, how am I doing? How am I showing up? And when you marry those two together, the other people's perceptions, which is the only thing that really matters, and your own perceptions, that's when the magic happens. If you get with someone who is open to change, is willing to listen to feedback, it makes all the difference in the world. And then you create a healthier organization with higher levels of employee engagement. And if you don't have that, I don't know if if you have a sustainable business. So that's where we focus our time. That's what we do.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think you do have a sustainable business when that's lacking, because you just have employee churn, right? And in the COVID-19 world, where we have crazy high unemployment and just all of the uncertainty, we don't have the same labor market strain that we did even 2 months ago. But for the most part, we've certainly over the last 5 years or more, it's been a really hyper competitive labor market. It's been hard to get good people. And so you can't just churn through people. You can't afford to do that as an organization. And for a variety of reasons, that's not a sustainable model. And yet so many organizational leaders lead in such a way that they're creating the context for just that to happen, because they're not helping their people feel empowered. They're not helping them feel a part of what's happening. They don't, they don't feel like they belong. They don't feel like they're heard. They don't feel like they have the opportunity to fulfill their potential. And that's detrimental to the long-term health of any organization.
Well, and we saw it. It's not so much right now, but when there was very low unemployment, well, let's look at, like 2008, where no one was leaving a job. They were scared, of losing their job. And we would go in and say, we would talk employee engagement with leaders, and they said, well, we don't have a problem with turnover. Well, of course you don't. No one's leaving because they're afraid to leave. But are they happy? Are they productive? Do they want to be there? And it's the same today.
And what happens once things, like in 2008, once the recession starts so once we start to get out of that, then people do have options, and they're going to remember how they were treated.
Well, they'll remember that, but then they also say, well, it's like a lot of things. It's the pain of change to go to a new employer is much greater than staying here. I may not like it here. I may be treated like a farm animal, but I don't know what the grass isn't necessarily greener. We have the same issue going on today. You have a workforce that's remote, that is, you can't check on them that easily. And if for you to say, oh no, we don't have turnover, well, one, people are just afraid of losing their jobs again. And, you can jump from one place to another, but the grass isn't greener. It's probably just a different shade of brown. And you're much better off investing in employee engagement and improve their productivity, improve how well they innovate. Are they a team? Is there trust among all of them? And that is all proven. That isn't something new we're bringing to the market, but we do have tools that help folks with that. But it's surprising how most leaders don't want to. It's like grabbing the third rail. They just don't want to know the answers, because they know if they ask the questions, they're going to have to do something. And not
Yep.
doing anything with the data is worse than just even not asking. But
Yeah.
I wish I could tell you we were busy as could be helping people understand what their employees are thinking about, but we aren't. We got capacity.
Yeah. And I think it's the age-old problem of organizations. It's not unique to a recession or a global pandemic. When the economy's good, when the economy's bad, all organizations need to be focusing on these things. And sometimes they just feel like they have more budget or more time to attend to it. But it's always an issue. It's always a challenge, and organizations need to be thinking. If they're trying to think in terms of long-term sustainability and long-term strategy, they need to be considering these
Well,
questions and being proactive.
and when times are good, they say, oh, there's money available for this. And so we don't need to do this right now, leadership development. And when times are tough, they're saying, wow, the budget's tight. We can't afford it.
Right.
And
Right.
my peers are all saying, no, now's the time to do it. Now is when you need it probably more than ever. And it's a shame. I mean, I've got one client who was supposed to do a strategic plan this June, in a few months. And I got a note from them just last week saying they've put that off for a year because the environment is so, uncertain right now. And I'm going, no, now is when you need to do that strategic plan. Maybe it's not a 5-year plan, maybe it just be a 3-year plan. But to not do one is such a huge mistake. But they, are going to do what they want to do. I can tell them the best advice would be do something now. A poor plan, I'd rather you do the plan and execute it poorly than to not do any plan and, just kind of drift along. But
Yeah.
they,
Yeah. Well, good. In the last couple of minutes we have together, maybe you can just share a little bit of what you're currently working on and what you're excited about.
Yeah, we got a number of things going on. Probably the biggest, we were ready to launch a new program uh, that was really, it's ideal now to help get employees re-engaged with the organization's purpose, their culture, their whole reason for being in it. We were going to launch it as a series of four-hour workshops, but no one's doing those anymore. So we're scrambling to do it in a virtual way. And it's all about character-based capitalism, culture of leadership, culture of ownership. And it all comes down to the overarching theme is how do you make more money by doing what's right for your key stakeholders? And so we've got a great program for that. It's based on a book by a Chicago author that hasn't been even published yet. It's like a Patrick Lencioni fable about two companies and how they take different paths and the different results they get. And it's really a nice program, and we're just getting ready to launch that virtually for organizations. The other thing that has me really excited, we continue to focus mostly on employee-owned and family-owned businesses. They really understand the need for culture, communication, leadership development, and succession planning, which are really the pillars of our business. So we focus a lot on them. And that new program I mentioned is ideal for newer ESOPs or family-run businesses. So we've got just a lot of great ideas. Now we just have to wait for things to unthaw or unfreeze a bit, and
Yeah.
we're going to be in good shape.
Well, that's wonderful. And where can my listeners go to find out more about your programs?
Well, certainly our website, lwcacademy.com, or just give me a call, or send me an email, lee@lwcacademy.com, or reach out to me. You'll find all our contact information on the website. So feel free, again, do that. And we'd be happy to, even if you just need a sounding board. I mean, that's usually where the best conversations start, where the best client relationships begin. So I'm not here pushing. I would take that leadership assessment if you want. That's a freebie. You can start to get to know us that way. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lee. It's been a real pleasure talking with you. We just don't have enough time to go any deeper right now on any of these topics, but I hope that perhaps we can have a chance to have further discussions in the future. And I'd love to have you back on at some future date.
I'd enjoy that, John. This was fun. It always goes by so quick.
It does. Thanks. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I hope you stay safe and healthy and have a great week.
You too. You take care.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.